YouTube's going live.
Cool.
Okay, so did you work on anything or no?
No.
Or you just
Um,
stuck on the computer stuff?
yeah. It's been really fiddly because of some setup choices I made some time ago. Um, but yeah. All right. I've got YouTube up. Yeah. So I'm using my laptop at the moment, so it's doesn't have my usual things.
Oh, desktop's still not working?
No, there was like an audio stutter issue when I was testing it just before this, where it sounded like the mic was going to cut out sort of intermittently. So I figured this was a better plan.
Okay,
Yeah.
any ideas which activity you'd prefer to work on today?
Um, so doing like a discussion thing doesn't have much in the way of prereqs. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay,
I like it. Well, yeah, I'm a bit tired and not on my game type thing, but otherwise, I
do you
think it could
remember the
be.
discussion prompt? I know there was the Bitcoin one.
So yeah, I wrote them down. Um, so yes, we talked about the genes thing. Um,
Okay, how about conflicts of interest?
yeah. So I was just thinking about this. So this is something that I've thought a bit about, and like I know that this has to do with objectivism, but I don't know much about it. Um,
It's not
and
original to objectivism, it's a fairly standard liberal view. For example, Bastiat wrote about it around 1850-ish. There are
so I
elements
take it
of it previous,
the rough
like
idea I
Godwin.
take it is like well, the way I sort of think about it is like uh things like if you try and make progress, um, well, I guess it first assumes that you like have progress at heart more than anything else. Is that part of it or
Uh, Not really.
no? Okay.
I mean, it's probably related if you think about it in a certain way.
I guess yeah, I've tried to reverse engineer it, having heard it, but not read anyone's arguments for it.
Okay, so can you brainstorm some of your initial skepticism reasons?
Yep. That sounds.
I think you have a typo or something.
Yeah, no, I'm keyboard shortcuts. Okay. The reason I typed that and deleted it, I was just thinking, there's sort of component ideas that I want to put in here, but they seem like things like that would cause the question like why did you include that, and don't have a good answer for it. So I'm just gonna sort of list them out so that they're separate a bit. I feel like it's the idea is sort of like not um it's unclear to me, I guess, which is why this is lots of dot points.
Okay, and do you have objections to the conclusion? Like, are there reasons you think that conclusion would be wrong, regardless of the reasons for it?
Not particularly. I can see the like coming up with solutions to apparent conflicts of interest between rational people, rational men, as like I can see the solutions to that being hard to come up with sometimes, but it seems like unless like you only want to like unless the goal is particularly to be malicious, it's hard to see how it would necessarily conflict. And if the goal is to be malicious, then it's hard to see how the person would be rational.
Okay, yeah, let's forget about malicious for a minute. What about two people want the same job? Is that a conflict of interest?
So superficially, it seems like it, because they're competing for the same resource. Uh, Arguably, there's like a better arrangement, um, comparative advantage wise, which means that like I guess the way out I see from an apparent conflict is that the person who won't get the job, their life is better anyway because the other person got the job. That feels a bit weak though.
Yeah, I'm doubtful that the comparative advantage issues are going to give them enough personal benefit to make up for having to get some other job in all cases.
Uh, It makes it I mean, so if there was a conflict, then we can well, if we presume that they're both rational, the job is good or whatever. Um, so I presume conflict of interest is like pretty broad in this sense. Like it's not the legal sense of like a conflict of interest, but just as in that these two
Right.
rational men pursuing their things, uh, there's no, there's only apparent conflicts between their goals. There's not real conflicts. Um,
Right. So some of the relevant questions are, should people ever work against each other? Do people ever have cause to have a fight, get into a war, a violence, a force, because there's no other way to resolve the issue? Um, is the only way to resolve the issue compromise where people agree to sacrifice their interests just because they want to avoid war? Stuff like that.
so neither, I mean, violence seems like, while there are cases where violence might be necessary, I don't think that there are cases that involve two rational people. Um, that's like particularly because one of the parties is irrational. Um, Compromise is a harder one to answer because it like there's a natural sort of like I don't know idea of a solution where it's like the two people both have a part-time job, but that doesn't really sound like it's if their goal is to get a full-time job, then that's not a solution at all.
Yeah, and a lot of jobs can't be split in half.
Hmm. Or there's like way too much overhead. Um,
Yeah, so it doesn't work well.
so the apparent conflict is that there's just a scarce resource, a job, and there's not enough to go around. Um,
Yeah, and you could come up with other examples like oil or gold or something like I want this gold ring and you want this gold ring. The job example has the attribute that there isn't already an owner. Like usually a gold ring, someone already owns it. Um, but with the job, like it could go to either person.
Hmm.
The owner is in the person who can provide the job doesn't want it for himself. Like
Yeah, like the business owner or whoever's who wants
yeah,
to hire someone. Um, One of the reasons that there might not be a conflict is because naturally like if there's more demand than supply, then the workers should, or the potential workers should essentially lower their bids, and then that goes below a threshold for one of them, and so they no longer want the job. That would be like a
that's a method of resolving who gets the job, but you could still claim there's a conflict of interest because if that guy wasn't bidding so low, I could get a wonderful job. So the fact that, he has low expenses or whatever is enabling him to take the job and is making my life worse, allegedly. So like one of the ways to look at it is would I be better off if that person didn't exist? Do I have cause to like wish he'd just get hit by a car tomorrow?
well, that sounds pretty extreme and probably more like there's bigger economic downsides for that sort of thing because you end up, I mean, if you always compete with people and you always had that view, then you end up with a population of one, then there are no more jobs. Um,
Well, most people aren't directly competing with you.
hmm.
So it's a fairly minority thing for most people that someone comes along and is trying to get like the exact job they want or is actually a major competitor that can make the difference.
So I don't see how they wouldn't how there wouldn't be a conflict here. Um, there's various sort of, I don't know, ideas that seem sort of like altruistically or altruisticy, sort of like greater good type stuff, but that feels pretty sloppy. Um,
Okay, so try to write down what you think the scenario is and what the conflict of interest is and why it is unfixable.
hard to argue that it's unfixable entirely because there's uh like any like all evils are due to a lack of knowledge. Um, it's like there should always be some idea that could potentially resolve the issue, but
Yeah,
that doesn't
sure,
mean that
but
it's
if no one knows what it is,
yeah.
the idea that we could come up with a solution in the future isn't a
Doesn't help
solution
us today.
now.
So So this seems like I guess the crux of the thing then, um, that if it's a fixable problem and we are able to put like time constraints on it, like it needs to happen today, then it sort of seems like we need solutions in advance, um, that apply to this, like these, or maybe there's different solutions for different situations, but they sort of need to apply to sort of a class of situations generally. Um, yeah, I don't know what the solution would be though.
Okay, do you want to post this stuff in the microblogging thread?
Yep.
All the stuff I think would be better. All the text.
Cool. Adding some annotations because I feel like that would
Yeah, I think a title would be good too, so the start of the discussion stands out.
um, okay, that should be posted or shortly. There we go.
FYI, you can hit quote and then copy paste that.
That'll. Oh, is that new? Does it automatically quote
No,
all
it's
of it?
been here for a while.
Oh, I don't think I've ever hit the quote button. I've just hit reply. That's why I'm. That makes more sense.
Yeah, I've had this feature. People don't use it very often. I have a bookmark that quotes as well.
Does that just quote the line or that you have selected, or
No, the whole box.
okay? That's neat. It's a thing that I
It's
feel like
posted
IDE
somewhere.
should have.
I can get it. Let's see.
Okay, posted.
Okay, see if this explanation makes sense. This tries to explain the principle.
Right. So one thing that I feel like is maybe worth mentioning, I had trouble with what I was going to write in this last bit because I was trying to think of uh, like sort of trying to get at this idea of like more than one or two options sort of thing. And anyway, it was significant because it became much easier when I asked it as like more of an investigative question as opposed to trying to either like uh, replay back what I thought your views were, or trying to put my ideas down because they're unclear. So yeah, so it was easier to write a inquisitive question than like an accusatory one or a trying to be objectively summarizing one or something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
that makes sense because you don't need to take a position on it in order to ask a question. If you're not sure what your position is, then it's easier to do a question.
that it surprised me that it was easier.
How come? Do you have past experience with questions being hard, or
Lack of actually just asking questions like this, I think. It's just it's not what I do automatically, so it doesn't happen very often. Um, Particularly when like there are times where like someone is like quite unclear about something, uh, and I ask questions then, but the person doesn't like write clearly about whatever they're trying to communicate. Whereas this feels much more different in that, uh, yeah, um, in that my ideas are the ones that are not clear.
yeah, I've asked people questions a lot and gotten unclear answers, and it can be difficult, but I try a lot anyways, because it's hard to have a conversation if you're not asking some questions. Like you can do a monologue lecture, but that's pretty different.
Yeah, I think that's. I mean, I feel like it was my default before, and I feel like it's a lot of people's defaults. Um, or makes me think of a lot of the less wrong discussion.
Okay, I posted a reply. Oh, text arrows are resizable. I don't know if you know that.
Yes, yep.
Also, on mine, there's a script to expand it when you get to the bottom. So it gets taller.
I've noticed that, and well, I think it's so this effect where the layout changes slightly when you're making new
Yeah.
lines. Missed another comment.
Okay, replied with more thoughts on the king stuff.
Yep.
BRB.
No worries.
Hello.
Yep.
It seems fine to me. Is there something you're getting hung up on?
Yeah, so this felt circular to start with, but then I was putting into words in my head, which would be like there might be something better than capitalism because people aren't always rational, therefore there might be something better than capitalism, which is not really circular, that's just like a bad sentence. I mean it's circular when put like that, but it's not it's not if you like it doesn't need to be put like that. Um,
Yeah,
the
okay,
first
so it's not perfect, but I thought it was adequate to move the discussion along.
yeah. You mean like this middle section
Well,
or this?
the whole comment.
Okay, yeah. Um, I'll just post it like that. I think the middle bit, like the I'm worried there's a tautology bit, that I am like
I replied if you didn't see.
cool. Oh no, I haven't. Sorry.
You can finish what you're doing first if you prefer. Like, you don't need to switch to this one.
This, I don't feel like I'm going to be done for a little bit.
Okay.
Like it's, in terms of this is, I mean, I said revisiting the main topic, but I'm sort of trying to, yeah, it's like my notes for trying to process sort of everything from start to finish. Yeah. I think this sort of stuff would maybe help though, because it gives me more background for the other thinking.
Yeah. About your notes, I'll just paste what I had, since you're not going to share them right away. This was just relevant to some of the stuff you're writing, it might help.
Cool.
The other thing I have pre-written is a bunch of scenarios. Like the type I asked you for, I also wrote a bunch down. Yeah, when I said a parent, I just meant like it looks like there might be a conflict of interest, not that there
Yeah.
necessarily was one.
Yep. Okay, cool. Oh, that's probably, oh no, okay. Is there yeah, okay. No, it did come up. Um there is a slight delay. Oh, that's right.
I don't know if you want to do this immediately or possibly work on it for next time. You want to write some of the other stuff while there's still time, or if you have any questions.
Um yeah, so might start I mean some of these, like I think the banana tree one is hard. Um the rich guy in a suit walking past a drowning person is maybe easier to see.
Okay, so
Um,
there's several context things.
hmm.
With the banana tree, like who's the owner, or where did this banana tree come from? Who found it? Who planted it? Who's been eating from it in the past? Like, what is the social system they're living under? If you try to paint the whole picture, it helps. Did they just like get shipwrecked on a small island and find it?
I think I
If
was
you have a
yeah,
specific scenario, it helps you decide what makes sense.
okay. I'm just gonna note that down.
It's possible to try to make nightmare scenarios like you're on a lifeboat, you're shipwrecked, the boat has enough food if one person eats all the food to make it to an island. Um, but if the food is shared, everyone dies. You can try to make scenarios like that, and they're not entirely impossible, but they don't have much to do with like what sort of social system should society use and what is daily life like and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean I'm like contrived uh things like that. I don't think
And
they end up being particularly interesting.
yeah, even in that scenario, you can come up with answers like, well, they should just flip a coin for it and not have a fight. Like,
If they
whoever
have a fight,
loses
then it's
goes
what yeah.
quietly. Yeah, because if they fight, they're probably both dead. They might as well, if they could actually both be reasonable, they could actually have a 50% chance if there's two of them.
Um how does that change if one of the people is like say one of the guys is like a 22-year-old footballer and the other guy is like a 5-year-old child? Um like the footballer could just throw the child out, right? Or something where there's a big size disparity.
Yeah, yeah, you can make the scenarios
I guess it's just
nastier.
yeah, finding um the next nasty thing. So yeah, okay. I wonder, is it generally sort of the case that providing more detail, like it's vague situations can seem like there's conflicts because basically because it's not specified enough. Um, but
See,
if we
that's
do
part of
actually
what
specify it,
happens. The vagueness is part of the issue for sure.
so how would I go about, like, if I, if we talk about multiple candidates running in the same election, um, there's
Well, yeah,
generally, sorry, yeah,
you try to make it realistic. Like, if you just think of sort of a standard election scenario, and then you think I'm in the shoes of a particular candidate, what would I want to actually do? Like, what do I think is in my interest to do other than play fair and follow the election rules? Like, what actual actions would I take? And then, in the alternative to taking specific actions, you can imagine, like, how would I like society be set up differently? Like, if the election rules were different, would that be better for me? And would that be better or worse for other people, and so on? So you can also look at hypotheticals. But they have to, you should try to think through what they are. Like, if the system is, I get whatever I want, like, everyone's going to hate you. There's problems there. You're creating conflicts of interest. On the other hand, if the system is some sort of general principle that's different than the current one, you can think out what the consequences of that are overall.
So it feels like there's a bit of a trap is not the right word, but like a common mistake that people would fall into, or at least that I'm having trouble not falling into, um, which is stuff like so two candidates running in the same election, and yet just normal sort of situation. They can both agree on the rules and they both voluntarily participate like with those rules. Um, there's no conflict up till then. The reason it looks like there's a conflict is because they both want to win, but like I guess they both have limits on that. Like they don't want to win by violence or by like defrauding the election process or things like that. So does that mean that actually like the loser is sort of okay with losing? Like I guess that so that there's no
Yeah, I
conflict
mean,
there?
he'd like to have won in some sense, but yeah, he's ought to be okay with. He tried his best, the system spoke, and he got an outcome and he had his chance, and if he'd competed better, he could have won, and he can try to do better next time, and those are all things he ought to be able to live with and be okay with.
Hmm.
And if he wants a system where he won't have to face things like that, he needs to think through what the system is and uh, in what way it's going to prevent him from ever dealing with disappointments.
So if there was so say there was like an election system similar to something that we have now, except that there's like a quirk that means that it's inefficient in some way, or like occasionally makes mistakes. Which I
Mm-hmm.
mean ours does too. Then like really the solution like there are solutions by that are like improving systems. Like we looked at capitalism sort of
Oh
stuff
yeah,
before
so he
because
could have
we
been the
looked at
better candidate, but he lost because of a quirk. That wasn't good for him. That wasn't good for society either in general. Like, we'd prefer
mm,
to patch up our system. We're just, haven't figured it all out yet. Another part of what happens that I think confuses people is they have these sort of hybrid ideas between bad principles and I get what I want, like biased systems.
mm.
So they'll be like, I'm rich. And then they'll propose the system, whoever's rich gets what they want. Um, so it's sort of like the I would get whatever I want system, but they're pretending that it's a general principle that rich people get what they want.
So I
And
think in oh yeah.
the interplay between those two can be confusing. There's something to think through there about sort of trying to have it both ways.
Yeah. It it feels so I mean uh it feels like a lot of the people who are like in favor of direct democracy type things have that sort of error. Um where basically they're in favor of it because they think that like things are like the decisions that are being made today are like would disagree with a direct democracy-esque system such that they would essentially get what they want. Um, I don't know many people who have said
Right,
they're
so
in
they
favor
want
of
to
it, but
switch systems because they're biased and they think the system will be better according to their views, rather than because they think it's a better system.
yeah, pretty much.
It'll
I think that
turn out more
almost
policies they like.
yeah, in essence that it'll just agree with them more. Um,
Oh, yeah. Some people think that basically my ideas are rational, so if we have a more rational system where the voters are less dumb, then everyone will vote for things that make sense, which is, whatever I think. It's sort of like the way people imagine themselves as the dictator for socialism. Or
mm.
not, it's not always themselves personally, but they'll often imagine a dictator who does things that they agree with. They're like, if only we had a rational guy in charge.
Yeah, whereas I think it actually sort of makes sense to go the other way in that the the better quality of like democratic systems or whatever systems we have, the better that quality gets, then the more we should be surprised by the outcome. In the same way that, like, if someone, as someone gets like like, increasingly better at philosophy than you, or, obviously I'm thinking about myself, but um, as someone has increasingly good ideas, then they're going to be more and more surprising. Um, so there's sort of like there's democratic systems that are surprising in the bad way because all these decisions are terrible, and then there's like this normal sort of bulge in the middle that has average decisions, but people aren't that surprised by it. And then there's another surprising system because it's
Oh,
making
I
really
see.
good
If the
decisions.
system is able to like find the best ideas and implement them, they're going to be more surprising than if it is just
Hmm.
taking the like average ideas that are the most popular and well known.
Yeah. So the more like proactive a
Okay, yeah,
system gets. Um,
that makes sense.
but I don't think many people foresee something like that, which is odd because, and that's why
Right.
they say
I
stuff
think
like
I
will
think
the
if you'd
people.
asked me a few minutes ago about my intuition, I would have said that the results of Flux would be hard to predict. It sounds kind of chaotic because it's like a significantly different system. Like I wouldn't just expect it to do whatever I think is good. I'd be like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no, I'm somewhat like that too. But I think that the outcomes that'll happen through that would still be better than uh, than what we have today. Like, I don't think chaos or unpredictability is like necessarily a bad thing. It can be, but uh, like
I
it's
think
very relative.
I think a lot of your problem with Flux, just in very broad terms, is that it's not actually a replacement for the system we have today. It's a replacement for a section of the system we have today, which is some
Mm,
of the explicit rules. Um, but it's not really compatible with some of the unwritten rules where people are controlling the outcomes. Like there's sort of a ruling class that has quite a bit of control over things, and it's not designed to enable them to keep having that control, but it's also not offering an alternative social system. Like, how do you replace the system of having elites trying to influence things from the shadows or whatever? Like, it doesn't offer a direct rival for that or a replacement.
so I think I get what you mean. I think there's actually a lot more room in something like Flux for those sort of people. Like, I don't think people who are doing politics now will just be out of a job if Flux came along tomorrow and was, that system was being used instead. Um, because they have like significant knowledge and like skills, relevant skills that other people don't.
So
Um,
there's some people that are like that, but I think there's quite a few people who have friendships and irrationality, who
hmm,
can't really work in the open to like persuade a bunch of people to make them their proxy for votes or something. Like if the system becomes reasonable, they're not able to deal with that. The things they're doing right now like have to be hidden because a lot of people disapprove of them.
yeah, so I can sort of
Like
see that.
there's a
Oh,
big
yep.
problem there, but it is to some extent the status quo. Like some of that stuff is real and a significant part of society. And so if you're changing like a linked part of society in a major way, you have to sort of address that in some manner. I think you can't just ignore it like as if it was irrelevant because it's a significant part of the political system in the elections and stuff. Is people like George Soros semi behind the scenes manipulating things and whatever.
Yeah. This feels like a potential conflict though, but I guess I'm not sure if the rational men thing
Yeah, I don't think those people are
is sort of like an
rational
escape
and
hatch.
that they should be doing what they're doing.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think a lot of the excuse of some of them, maybe some of the better ones, is society's not rational. If I stop doing this, we just get terrible outcomes anyways. Like
yeah.
everyone is sheep. We have to manipulate them because they don't know what's good for them, blah blah blah.
I think the big problem I have with that is that it's a self-fulfilling sort of system in that if you take away all people's abilities to make decisions in a serious way, then you shouldn't expect them to be good at making decisions. So it's sort of
Yeah,
it's a bit of
that makes sense.
a yeah, I don't know, maybe there's a phasing in sort of idea, but then to have a phasing in sort of system where we gradually are given more autonomy, then it just feels like um, sort of like the same sort of arguments for like practical restrictions on freedom or things. Um, in that, is there really any benefit to not just going whole hog immediately? Cool. All right. I'm gonna have a think about these things before next time. This is yeah.
Yeah, so I posted other scenarios. So for next time, you could work on your scenarios and my list. And if you understand the conflicts of interest stuff well now, then you should be able to look at these and be like, oh, the answer to this one is this, the answer to this one is this. Like, they shouldn't be super hard to give some sort of response to. So see how
Yeah.
you do with them. And then I was also going to suggest doing some sort of discussion tree. It could be just a quick one with some paraphrases and a broad outline, or you could go through everything in detail and make a tree. It's up to you what you decide would be useful.
Yeah, I'm not sure how well I understand this yet. I'm starting to see some of it, but I don't feel like I can tackle everything yet.
Okay, yeah. The other thing you could think about is the discussion itself, like discussion methods, what it's like to have a discussion. Do you have any questions about that or problems?
Yep. Yep. No, that sounds good. Cool. All right, it's on the hour. Um, uh, Monday, right? So, 3 days?
Yeah.
I think that's right. Cool. All right.
Okay.
See you then.
See you later.